Some places were never meant to be investigated, but tonight we're going to talk about one of them. If you enjoy true horror and unexplained mysteries, consider subscribing. Now let's begin. I'm going to say this once, and I'm only saying it because I don't wear the uniform anymore. There is a trail in this park that does not exist on any map. It used to, then it didn't. If you hike long enough in national parks, you learn the difference between places meant for people and places that tolerate them. This trail didn't even do that. My name doesn't matter. I was a backcountry ranger for 8 years. Search and rescue, night patrols, missing persons, and every ranger who worked this district knew about the trail they told us never to log. The one that never showed up on GPS. The one dispatch would go quiet about. The first time I heard it mentioned was during a midnight shift change. A senior ranger leaned close and said, "If you hear footsteps where there shouldn't be any, don't follow them downhill." He didn't smile. If you're listening to this because you're drawn to park ranger horror stories and national park mysteries, stay with me. And if you want the stories we're not supposed to tell, you already know what to do. Because once you hear about this trail, you start noticing the missing space where it should be. And once you notice that space, it notices you back. The trail used to be called Cedar Line Spur, at least unofficially. It branched off a popular loop trail. No sign, no marker, just a thinning in the trees that looked convenient. Too convenient. During the day, hikers didn't see it. At night, under a headlamp, it looked obvious, like it wanted to be followed. Ranger protocol said unmarked trails should be reported, flagged, surveyed. Cedar Line never was. I asked my supervisor once why it wasn't logged. He didn't answer right away. He just adjusted the radio on his shoulder and said, "That trail was decommissioned." I asked when. He said, "Before you were hired." That should have ended it. But later that night, dispatch called in a report. Unexplained screams in the woods. That phrase again. Caller was a couple camping near the loop trail. They said the screaming came from downhill, from somewhere they couldn't see. I was assigned to patrol. As I walked, the forest felt thick. No wind, no insects. Then my light caught the break in the trees. The trail. No sign, no barrier, just waiting. Protocol says you don't enter unmaintained trails alone at night. Protocol also says you investigate distress calls. I radio dispatch. Visual on possible spur trail. No marker. Static answered first. Then dispatch said, "Copy that. Do not proceed onto any unofficial trails." I stood there longer than I should have. The screaming had stopped, but the silence felt heavy, like pressure in my ears. I took one step closer. The ground was worn, not overgrown, pressed down by use, recent use. I keyed the radio again. Dispatch, confirm decommission date for Cedar Line Spur. Silence. Then a different voice came on. Not my usual dispatcher. Negative on that trail designation. My stomach dropped, because he said designation, not existence. I asked again. Static. Longer this time. Then quietly. Ranger, return to marked trail. No call sign. No explanation. I backed away. As I did, I heard something behind me. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Matching mine. I didn't turn around. I didn't run. I walked back to the main trail and didn't look downhill again. That night, The screams were logged as wildlife. They always are. After that, I started noticing patterns. Missing hikers near that loop trail. Search grids that never extended downhill. Radio dead zones that weren't on any map. During briefings, senior rangers would pause if someone mentioned Cedar Line. Then the subject changed. One night, I found an old map in storage. Paper, folded, yellowed, and there it was. A thin line dropping off the loop. No name printed, just a route. The margin had a stamp. Removed safety. No date. I brought it to my supervisor. He looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "Where did you get this?" I told him. He sighed and closed the office door. "That trail was never meant to be hiked," he said. "It was a utility access during the park's early years." I asked why it was removed. He said, "Because people kept following something that walked ahead of them." I laughed once. He didn't. He leaned in and said, "Every missing person case that ends without remains intersects that trail." Then he took the map, and I never saw it again. 2 weeks later, a call came in just before midnight. A solo hiker, late 20s, experienced. Last ping from his phone came from the loop trail. I knew where that meant. Search and rescue launched at first light. But that night, I was already out there. Patrol vehicle parked. Radio on low. I didn't intend to go near Cedar Line. I swear that. But as I walked, my radio crackled. Not dispatch. Breathing. Slow. Close. Then a voice said my name. Not over the radio. Behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The forest stood perfectly still. Then downhill I heard footsteps. Heavy. Unhurried. Like someone confident I'd follow. I keyed the radio hard. Dispatch. Confirm if any units are below my position. Immediate response this time. Negative. No units assigned downhill. I whispered. Then who's walking down there? Silence. Then dispatch said, very carefully, "Ranger, do not pursue audio contact." I watched the trees. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard the hiker's voice, calling for help, from the trail that doesn't exist. Every instinct told me to go. Every rule told me not to. The voice sounded tired, hoarse. He said my name again. He shouldn't have known it. I stepped closer to the tree line. My light hit the start of Cedar Line spur. Clear as day. I raised the radio. "Dispatch, I have verbal contact with missing hiker." Static burst loud enough to make me flinch. Then a command tone. "Negative. That is not possible." I felt cold, because dispatch sounded scared. I asked, "Explain." They didn't. They just said, "Return to vehicle." Now, the voice downhill changed. It stopped sounding human. Words stretched. Syllables wrong. Like something practicing. I backed away. As I did, the footsteps started again. Faster. Closer. I turned and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I hit pavement. That night, the hiker was declared missing. No remains. No gear. No trace. Except one thing. His boot print. At the start of a trail that isn't on any map. After that, Cedar Line stopped pretending. Rangers reported hearing radios call from powered-off units. Footprints appearing overnight. Always leading downhill. One ranger followed them once. He came back at dawn. Didn't speak. Just handed in his badge and left the park. When I asked why, he said, "It learns faster than we do." Administration finally stepped in. They removed signage near the loop, adjusted trail routing, erased cedar line digitally. But the forest didn't care. The trail remained. Because it wasn't made for us. It was made for something that walks patiently. Something that waits for someone to step just far enough off. I transferred districts soon after. But sometimes, at night, my phone loses signal. And I hear footsteps in my dreams. Always downhill. Always steady. Never rushing. Last year, a new ranger called me. Fresh hire. Different park. Same question. He asked, "Did your park ever remove a trail without telling the public?" I didn't answer. He said they'd found an unmarked spur. No GPS data. No history. But search cases clustered around it. I told him the only thing I could. If it isn't on the map, it doesn't want to be found. He laughed. Then he stopped laughing, because behind him, over the phone, I heard footsteps. I hung up. He didn't call back. If you hike national parks long enough, you start to notice what's missing. Gaps in maps. Stories that end early. Rangers who won't make eye contact when you mention screams in the woods. There are places removed not for safety, but for containment. Cedar Line Spur wasn't erased to protect hikers. It was erased to protect the lie that we control these parks. We don't. Some trails exist to test who listens, who follows, who steps off. And once you do, the trail keeps you. So that was it. At least, that's what I told myself at the time. I stayed on marked trails after that. Did my reports by the book. Stopped asking questions that didn't have answers. On paper, Cedar Line Spur was gone. No more calls. No more screams logged. No more radio anomalies tied to that section of the park. For a while things felt quiet. Too quiet. I convinced myself the trail had finally closed in on itself. That whatever had been happening down there had ended. Because that's what rangers do. We move on to the next patrol. The next case. The next missing hiker. I remember standing on the loop trail one afternoon. Sunlight cutting clean through the trees. Thinking, maybe we'd won. Maybe removing it from the maps was enough. I turned back toward my vehicle. And that's when my radio crackled. Just once. No voice. No static. Only the sound of footsteps. Walking downhill. I wish that was where it ended. I wish knowing was enough. But knowledge doesn't close doors in the forest. It opens them. Months after I left the service, I started waking up at the same time every night. 2:17 a.m. No alarm, no noise, just the certainty that I was awake when I shouldn't be. At first, it was just silence. Then I started hearing wind that didn't exist. Leaves brushing together. Slow, measured, and underneath it, footsteps, always downhill. I live nowhere near that park anymore. Different state, different terrain. Doesn't matter, because Cedar Line wasn't tied to a place. It was tied to behavior, to curiosity, to the moment someone decides rules are suggestions. When I finally checked my phone one night, there was a voicemail. No number attached, just static, and breathing. The breathing wasn't panicked. That's what bothered me. It was calm, patient, like someone waiting for me to recognize it. Halfway through the message, a voice came through. Not clear, not distorted, practiced. It said, "Trail's clear." That phrase means something specific to rangers. It means the route is safe, walkable, open. I deleted the voicemail. It came back the next night. Same time, same message. I turned my phone off. The footsteps started anyway. Not outside. Inside the walls. Above me. Below me. Like something pacing a slope that didn't exist. I slept with the lights on for weeks. Didn't help. I finally drove back to the park. I told myself it was closure. It wasn't. The loop trail had changed. Wider. More signage. More warnings. But the forest felt thinner. Like it had learned how to wait better. I stood where cedar line used to branch off. Nothing visible. No gap. No worn ground. Perfectly normal. That scared me more than seeing it, because that meant it could hide now. I keep my old radio out of habit. No battery. Still it crackled. A familiar voice came through. Dispatch. Using my call sign. Do you have eyes on the spur? I dropped the radio. It hit the dirt and went silent. Behind me, something exhaled. Close enough to feel warm. I didn't turn around. I walked back to my car. Slow. Steady. Matching its pace. On my way out, I passed a family at the trailhead. 2 kids. Parents smiling. The father asked me, "Hey, is there a shortcut loop down there?" He pointed downhill, right where cedar line used to be. I swallowed. I said, "No." He frowned. "But it's not on the map," he said. "Still looks like a trail, though." I looked past him. For just a second, I saw movement in the trees. Waiting. I said, "Some paths are meant to be taken." He laughed. They walked away. Downhill. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I heard one of the kids ask, "Who's that man walking ahead of us?" There was no one else on the trail. Search and rescue was called an hour later. Family overdue. Same area. Same silence. I didn't stay to hear the outcome. I already knew. Because cedar line doesn't take everyone at once. It spaces things out. Keeps patterns from forming. That's why it survives. That's why it was removed from maps instead of destroyed. You can't barricade curiosity. You can only pretend it doesn't exist. And hope it gets bored. It never does. I still hear from rangers sometimes. Encrypted emails. Careful wording. They don't say the name. They just ask if I ever dealt with a trail that moved. That appeared closer some nights. Farther others. A trail that sounds like someone walking ahead, but never behind. I tell them the same thing every time. If you hear it downhill, stop. Most of them don't listen, because they're rangers, and rangers are trained to go toward trouble. That's what Cedar Line counts on. There are official numbers for missing persons in national parks. Statistics. Charts. What they don't track are the near misses. The people who stepped onto something unmarked, then felt watched, and turned back. Those people carry it with them. Dreams of slopes that never end. Footsteps that match their own. A sense that somewhere, a trail adjusted itself. Just in case they change their mind. If you're listening to this late at night, and your phone signal flickers, that's normal. Probably. I don't know where Cedar Line goes. I don't think it goes anywhere. I think it just descends. Forever. One step at a time. With something always just ahead. Making sure you don't feel alone. Because isolation scares people. Companionship makes them follow. That's the trick. That's why the screams stop Once you step onto the trail, you're not lost anymore. You're accompanied. If this sounds familiar, if you've hiked somewhere that felt wrong in a quiet way, if you've noticed a path that wasn't there on the way in, trust that instinct. Maps don't show everything, and some omissions are intentional. Rangers don't talk about those trails because language gives them shape, and shape gives them permission. This is as close as I'll ever come to a warning, because once you see it, once you notice the gap, you're already standing too close. Somewhere, right now, a trail is being walked for the first time. Somewhere else, a map is being quietly updated, and a ranger is being told not to log what they heard. If you ever hear footsteps ahead of you in the woods, and no one answers when you call out, do not follow. Stay on the trail that wants you there. For more stories rangers aren't supposed to tell, subscribe to Park Ranger Confidential. And remember, not every path is meant to bring you back.